The moment she stood up, Hollywood changed forever. Not because of a line delivery, not because of a tantrum, but because Marilyn Monroe decided that a man's scar was more important than the most expensive shot of the day. This is the story Hollywood tried to bury, not with malice, but with something worse: indifference. Because what happened on stage 4 of Pinewood Studios on June 14, 1957, didn't fit the narrative. It couldn't be sold. It couldn't be spun. It couldn't be reduced to a headline or a press release or a studio-approved anecdote. And for 67 years, only 17 people knew the truth. The director is dead. The crew scattered across continents and decades. But the man with the scar kept a Polaroid in his wallet until the day he died, carried it through airports and job interviews and his wedding day and the births of his children. On the back, in faded blue ink that had been touched so many times, the letters were barely visible. 5 words: "She saw me as human." His name was James Harding. And before Marilyn Monroe linked arms with him in front of 50 witnesses, he was 3 days away from ending his life. But to understand why she saved him, we need to go back, not to that morning, not even to that year. We need to go back to 1935, to a place where scars weren't physical, they were invisible, and they were everywhere. Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Orphans' Home Society sits on a hill overlooking the city, a sprawling Victorian structure that promises safety, but delivers something far more complicated. Norma Jean Mortensen is 9 years old, small for her age, quiet in a way that makes adults uncomfortable, because it's not the quietness of shyness, but the quietness of calculation. She has already learned that survival means invisibility, that beauty is a liability, that the louder you cry, the longer you're ignored. These aren't lessons taught in classrooms, they're lessons carved into the nervous system through repetition and neglect. She's been in 3 foster homes already, each one a different flavor of abandonment. The first family returned her because she wet the bed, the second because the husband looked at her in ways that made his wife nervous, the third because there simply wasn't enough food, and Norma Jean understood before anyone said it out loud that she was expendable. So now she's here, in this orphanage that smells like boiled cabbage and industrial soap, where 73 children sleep in rows of iron beds, where the windows are barred not to keep intruders out but to keep the children in. But there's a boy. His name is Thomas. He has a port wine stain covering half his face, a deep red birthmark that sprawls from his left eye to his jawline like spilled wine on a tablecloth. It's the kind of marking that makes people look away quickly, as if the act of looking might somehow transfer the imperfection to them. The caretakers call him marked. The older boys call him worse, much worse. Thomas is 11, but looks younger because he's learned to make himself small, to fold inward, to take up as little space as possible. Norma Jane watches him eat alone, every single day, while the other children laugh and shove and steal food from each other's plates in the brutal hierarchy of institutional childhood. Thomas sits at the far end of the long wooden table, his head down, his marked face turned toward the wall. He eats quickly, mechanically, without tasting. The goal is to finish and leave before anyone notices him, before the mockery starts, before someone throws something. And one day, she does something inexplicable. It's a Tuesday. The orphanage serves oatmeal on Tuesdays, thin and grayish, with a single spoonful of brown sugar if you're lucky. Norma Jane gets her tray. She surveys the dining hall with those calculating eyes. She sees Thomas at his usual spot, isolated like a leper, and without hesitation, without announcement, she picks up her tray and walks the length of the room. Every child watches. The room doesn't go silent, that would be too dramatic. But there's a shift in the noise, a change in frequency. She sits down next to Thomas. She doesn't ask permission. She doesn't explain herself. She simply sits and places her tray next to his. Thomas freezes. His spoon hovers halfway to his mouth. He turns to look at her, and for the first time in months, someone is seeing his whole face, not glancing and looking away, but seeing. "Why are you sitting here?" he whispers, his voice rough from disuse. Norma Jean shrugs. "Because I wanted to." It's not a grand statement, it's not poetry, but it's honest. And in that moment, something shifts in Thomas's chest. Something that's been locked tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Because in that orphanage, proximity was rebellion. Sitting with the marked boy was social suicide. Norma Jean knows this. She's not naive. She understands exactly what she's doing. By aligning herself with the outcast, she's painting a target on her own back. The other girls will mock her. The boys will assume she's marked too, somehow, in ways not yet visible. But she sits anyway, and she eats her oatmeal. And when Thomas starts crying, silent tears that drip into his bowl, she doesn't comment on it. She just keeps eating. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is pretend not to notice someone's pain, while sitting close enough that they know they're not alone. Years later, Marilyn would tell her acting coach Lee Strasberg about that moment. She said, "He cried, and I realized that loneliness is the only thing worse than hunger. You can survive hunger. Your body adapts, it slows down, it learns to run on nothing. But loneliness, that kills something inside you that never grows back." Thomas and Norma Jean ate lunch together for 6 months, until Thomas was adopted by a family from Pasadena who saw past the birthmark to the gentle, intelligent boy underneath. On his last day at the orphanage, he gave Norma Jean his only possession, a smooth stone he'd found in the yard, worn soft by water and time. "So you remember," he said. She kept that stone for the rest of her life. It was found in her nightstand drawer the morning they discovered her body in 1962. Unremarkable to anyone who didn't know its history. But to Norma Jean, it was a monument, proof that she had once made a difference to someone, that proximity could be rebellion, that kindness could be resistance, that sitting with someone could save them. June 14, 1957. 22 years later, Marilyn Monroe is the most famous woman on Earth. Her face has been photographed more times than any human being in history. She is 31 years old and feels 60. She is the highest paid actress in Hollywood and sleeps 3 hours a night. She is married to Arthur Miller, one of America's greatest playwrights, and has never felt more alone. But inside dressing room A at Pinewood Studios in London, she is not Marilyn Monroe. She is Norma Jean, and she is dissociating. Dissociation, a psychological defense mechanism where the mind separates from the body to survive trauma. It's the brain's emergency exit. When reality becomes too painful, too overwhelming, too dangerous, consciousness simply leaves. The body continues to function, breathing, blinking, moving, but the essential self, the core of identity, floats somewhere else, somewhere safer. For Marilyn, dissociation is not occasional, it's chronic, it's her factory setting. She's been doing it since childhood, since those foster homes, since the orphanage, since the first time a man looked at her body instead of her face. The makeup artist for The Prince and the Showgirl, a kind woman named Eileen, later recalled the moment in an interview with the British Film Institute in 1989. Her hands were trembling so badly, she couldn't hold the lipstick. I had to do it for her. And the whole time she was staring at herself in the mirror, but she wasn't seeing herself. It was like she was looking at a stranger. She'd do this thing where she'd tilt her head and whisper, "Is that me?" Not as a joke. She genuinely couldn't recognize her own reflection. It broke my heart every single time. This is what people don't understand about Marilyn Monroe. The woman they see on screen, the breathy voice, the swaying walk, the knowing smile, that's a construction, a brilliant, painstaking construction. But it's not a person, it's a character, and the woman playing that character is exhausted. She's been on set for 6 weeks, 6 weeks of Laurence Olivier, legendary actor, notorious perfectionist, recent recipient of a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II, treating her like a child, correcting her posture, her diction, her timing, every direction delivered with the subtext, "You don't belong here." Olivier is 50 years old. He is theatre royalty. He has played Hamlet, Othello, Richard III on the stages of London and New York. He has been called the greatest actor of his generation. And he is deeply, profoundly offended that he has to share the screen with a Hollywood sex symbol who, in his estimation, cannot act. He says as much to the crew when Marilyn is out of earshot. She's never on time. She can't remember her lines. She has no technique. What he doesn't say, but everyone understands, is that he finds her beneath him, an American embarrassment, a blonde joke made flesh. The crew picked up on it immediately. If the director doesn't respect the star, the crew doesn't have to either. So slowly, incrementally, Marilyn Monroe, the most bankable actress in Hollywood, becomes an object of mockery on her own set. She walks onto stage 4 at 2:47 p.m. The call sheet says it's a simple shot, a ballroom scene. Marilyn and Olivier dancing, background actors filling the frame with elegance and period accuracy. The scene is set in 1911 London, the Carpathian Embassy, a celebration. Marilyn plays Elsie Marina, an American showgirl. Olivier plays Charles, the Prince Regent of Carpathia. The scene requires them to waltz while exchanging flirtatious dialogue. It should be simple, it should be fun, but standing in the back row, partially obscured by a prop column designed to look like marble, is James Harding, 29 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, broad shoulders that come from 3 years of manual labor on film sets, and a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, a jagged, angry line that pulls the skin tight, a souvenir from the Korean War, shrapnel from a mortar that killed 3 of his friends. James Harding wasn't supposed to be here, not as an extra, not in front of the camera. He'd been working as a grip, a stagehand responsible for setting up lights and moving equipment for 2 years. It's hard work, physical work, the kind of work where your face doesn't matter because no one's looking at it. He liked that, the anonymity, the focus on labor rather than appearance. But today, they needed extra bodies. The ballroom scene required 50 background actors, and only 43 showed up. Someone got sick, someone else had a family emergency, and the assistant director was scrambling. He saw James in the hallway, carrying a sandbag. "You're tall, you're in costume in 10 minutes. James hesitated. "I'm a grip, not an extra. The assistant director didn't have time for nuance. Today you're both. Wardrobe is in room 6. Move. So James found himself in a 1910s tuxedo that smelled like mothballs and sweat from a dozen other men. The bow tie was too tight, the shoes were too small. But he stood in the back row with the other extras and tried to blend in, tried to be invisible. But James made a mistake. He believed the casting director. He believed that maybe, just this once, his face wouldn't matter. That in a crowd of 50 people, with the camera focused on Marilyn Monroe and Laurence Olivier, no one would notice him. He was wrong. Laurence Olivier is behind the camera. He's in dual mode today, director and actor, which means he has to set up the shot, rehearse the background, explain the blocking, and then step into frame and perform. It's exhausting. It's a control freak's nightmare, and his patience, already thin, is evaporating in the June heat. The studio is sweltering. The lights generate enough heat to raise the temperature 15 degrees. Women are fainting in their corsets. Men are sweating through their shirts. The first take goes smoothly. Marilyn hits her mark. She delivers her lines with that breathy, tentative quality that Olivier hates but audiences love. The background actors sway in rhythm to the imaginary orchestra. Olivier glides her across the floor with mechanical precision. He calls cut. Good, let's go again. Tighter on Marilyn this time. The crew adjusts. The cinematographer, Jack Cardiff, pushes the camera closer. The focus puller adjusts his marks. The gaffer redirects a key light to eliminate a shadow on Marilyn's face, and everyone resets. Take 2. The clapperboard snaps, and the camera pushes in, closer, intimate, and that's when Olivier sees him. Through the viewfinder, framed perfectly in the background, standing directly behind Marilyn's left shoulder, is James Harding, and his scar catches the light. It's unavoidable, impossible to miss. A dark line that draws the eye away from Marilyn, away from the romance, away from the fantasy of 1911 elegance. Later, the script supervisor, a woman named Margaret, would describe Olivier's reaction in her personal diary, which was donated to the British Film Institute after her death. Olivier's whole body went rigid, like he'd just stepped in something foul. His face went red. Not embarrassment, anger, pure, unadulterated anger. Olivier steps away from the camera. He walks toward James with the deliberate slowness of a man who wants everyone to watch what happens next. The set goes quiet. Not the productive quiet of concentration, the anxious quiet of impending cruelty. You, Olivier says, his voice sharp. Yes, you with the... He pauses, and in that pause, everyone knows what he's going to say. Everyone braces for it. The face. Step out of the frame. Humiliation is a physical thing. It has weight. It has temperature. James later described it to his wife as being crushed and burned at the same time, like the earth opening up and swallowing you, but slowly. Slowly enough that everyone gets a good look. But he moves, because what else can he do? He's a grip playing an extra. Olivier is Laurence Olivier, so he steps to the side, out of frame, out of sight, into the shadows where he belongs. Olivier returns to the camera, checks the viewfinder, nods with satisfaction. Better, let's go again. The assistant director calls out, resetting for take 3, and the machine of production lurches forward, but now there's a gap in the frame, an empty space where James stood, and Olivier, obsessive about symmetry, notices immediately. We need someone to fill that spot. Wardrobe, get someone from holding. A production assistant, a young man barely 20, runs off set toward the holding area where the backup extras wait. This is the moment. This is where most stories would end. James would leave the set. He'd return to the equipment bay. He'd pick up his sandbag and his shame and continue his day. A replacement would arrive. Someone with a symmetrical face and an unremarkable history. The shot would continue. The scene would be completed. And no one would remember the man with the scar. No one except James Harding, who would remember it every day for the rest of his life. But Marilyn is watching. And something is happening inside her brain. Not conscious thought. Not deliberate analysis. Deeper. Neural. Cellular. Automatic. Mirror neurons. Discovered in the 1990s by Italian neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti, these are a cluster of cells in the brain that fire both when we perform an action and when we witness someone else perform it. They're the biological basis of empathy. The reason we wince when we see someone stub their toe. The reason we smile when we see a baby laugh. The reason we can't watch humiliation without feeling humiliated ourselves. And Marilyn Monroe's mirror neurons are screaming, because she's not seeing James Harding, 29-year-old grip from Manchester. She's seeing Thomas, the marked boy, the one who ate alone, and she's 9 years old again, sitting in that orphanage dining hall, watching someone be erased, watching someone be told, in every way except explicitly, that they don't deserve to exist in public, that their face is a mistake, that their presence is an offense. Her hands start trembling, not the gentle tremor from the dressing room, This is different. This is adrenaline. This is rage. Paula Strasberg, her acting coach standing off to the side, notices immediately. She steps forward, concerned, but Marilyn holds up a hand. Stop, wait, watch. The production assistant returns with a replacement. A young man barely 18 with a symmetrical face and empty eyes. Someone who will fade into the background appropriately. Someone who won't ruin the shot. Olivier nods approval. Perfect, places everyone. James Harding is moving toward the exit now, his shoulders slumped, his hand unconsciously touching his scar, a gesture so habitual he doesn't even know he's doing it. A gesture of shame so deep it's become physical reflex. He's 3 steps from the door, 3 steps from disappearing, 3 steps from going home to his 1-bedroom flat in Brixton, where he will sit in the dark and think about the bottle of sleeping pills he bought 2 days ago. The ones hidden in the bathroom cabinet behind the aspirin. The ones he's been rationing, saving, planning. But then, a sound, heels on concrete, sharp, purposeful, unmistakable. Marilyn Monroe steps off her mark. She's wearing a gold satin gown that cost more than James makes in 6 months. Her hair is platinum and perfect. Her makeup is flawless. She is the most photographed woman in the world, and she is walking toward James Harding. The entire set freezes. 50 extras, 20 crew members, Laurence Olivier, the cinematographer, the script supervisor, everyone, because this isn't in the script, this isn't blocking, this is Marilyn Monroe, in the middle of a take, walking away from the most expensive shot of the day. Paula Strasberg whispers to herself, "Oh my God, she's going to do it." The makeup artist Eileen asks, "Do what?" "Something that will cost her everything," Paula says, but she's smiling. This is the moment Hollywood tried to hide. Not because it was scandalous, not because it was violent or sexual or illegal, but because it was inexplicable, because the biggest star in the world was about to destroy a $50,000 shot for a man whose name wasn't even on the call sheet, because what she was about to do didn't fit any narrative. Hollywood knew how to sell. It wasn't romance, it wasn't martyrdom, it wasn't even good publicity, it was just human, and Hollywood has never known what to do with that. Marilyn reaches James. She's 5'5", he's 6'2". She has to look up to meet his eyes, and when she does, James sees something he hasn't seen in years. Recognition, not of his face, not of his scar, but of his humanity. She links her arm through his. The gesture is so simple, so old-fashioned, like something from a different era, a promenade, an escort, a declaration of partnership, and she holds on, tight, like she's afraid if she lets go, he'll disappear. "You're staying," she says quietly, just to him, then louder, to everyone, "He's staying." And Laurence Olivier, actor, director, Knight of the British Empire, is about to lose control of his set. Marilyn and James stand together in the center of stage 4. Every light in the building seems to be focused on them. The set is dead silent, except for the hum of the arc lights and the distant sound of London traffic outside. Olivier's voice cuts through, dangerous and calm. "Miss Monroe, we're ready to shoot." It's not a question, it's a command, a reminder of hierarchy, a reassertion of control. But Marilyn doesn't move. She's looking at James, not at Olivier, not at the camera, not at the 50 pairs of eyes boring into her, at James, at this man she's never met. This man whose name she doesn't know. This man whose scar catches the light like a lightning bolt frozen in skin. "He stays," she says. Her voice is soft but firm. The breathy Marilyn Monroe affectation is gone. This is Norma Jean speaking. Olivier's face shifts from confusion to anger. His jaw tightens, his hands clench. "I'm sorry?" he asks, though he heard her perfectly. "The man you removed." "He stays in the shot," Marilyn replies. The crew exchanges glances. The script supervisor Margaret writes frantically in her notes. She will later tell her husband that this moment felt like watching a car accident in slow motion. Inevitable and horrifying and impossible to look away from. What happens next unfolds in excruciating slow motion. Olivier walks onto the set. Not quickly, he's too controlled for that. But his movements are sharp, aggressive. He's a man used to deference, used to obedience, and he's trying to control his voice, trying to maintain the illusion of directorial authority, trying to solve this problem the way he's solved every problem on this production, with condescension disguised as patience. "Marilyn, darling," he begins, and the word darling is coated in acid. "We need aesthetic continuity. The background must be." She cuts him off. "He stays, or I don't shoot." The temperature in the room drops. Ultimables power plays, and Marilyn just declared war, because everyone on that set knows the math, knows the economics, knows the brutal calculus of Hollywood production. Without Marilyn, there is no movie. Without the movie, there are no paychecks. Warner Brothers has already invested $2 million. They need Marilyn Monroe's face on that poster to make that money back, and without paychecks, 50 crew members go home unemployed. Olivier knows this. He knows he's lost before the fight even begins, but he has to try, has to maintain the facade, has to pretend he's still in control. His voice barely restrains his fury. "This is my set, Miss Monroe, my production, and it's my face on the poster," Marilyn says. Ice cold, the words land like a slap, because she's right. Objectively, undeniably right. The silence stretches. 10 seconds. 20. Olivier is calculating, weighing his options. He could walk off set, he could call the studio, he could try to have Marilyn fired, but she's Marilyn Monroe. You don't fire Marilyn Monroe. You don't even threaten her, because the scandal would destroy the production faster than any delay. Then Marilyn turns to James, and she speaks to him directly, quietly, intimately, but her voice carries across the stage because the room is so silent that even breathing seems loud. "What's your name?" she asks. James is shaking, his whole body trembling. James Harding," he stammers. His accent is thick Manchester, working class, rough around the edges, everything Olivier looks down on. "James," Marilyn says, testing the name, making it real. "Look at me." James can't. His eyes are fixed on the floor, on his shoes, on anywhere but her face, because looking at her feels impossible, like staring at the sun. "James," she says again, firmer this time, not cruel, but insistent. Slowly, painfully, he raises his eyes. They're wet, his jaw is trembling. 29 years old, and he's about to cry in front of 50 people. "That scar," Marilyn says, and the whole room flinches. You don't talk about the scar, you pretend not to see it. That's the social contract. But Marilyn is breaking every rule. "Where did you get it?" she asks. James's voice cracks. "Korea, Hill 180, August 52. 5 years ago. 5 years since the mortar round that killed his friends. Since the shrapnel that tore through his face and left him alive but marked. Since he came home to a country that thanked him for his service and then refused to look at him." Marilyn's face softens, and she does something extraordinary. Her hand reaches up toward his face, slowly, telegraphing the movement so he can stop her if he wants. Her fingers hover an inch from his scar, not touching, just acknowledging, bearing witness. "Scars mean you survived something," she says, and her voice breaks on the word survived. "That means you're stronger than whatever tried to kill you." James's face crumbles. Tears spill. He's not trying to hide them anymore. Can't hide them. And Marilyn doesn't look away. She doesn't let him look away. She holds his gaze like she's physically holding him together. Then her voice rises, louder now, for everyone to hear. "I think it's beautiful. Beautiful." The word echoes. Some crew members look away, uncomfortable. Some stare, transfixed. One camera operator, a veteran of World War II who has his own scars hidden under his shirt, wipes his eyes. The makeup artist, Eileen, is openly crying, because everyone understands what's happening. Marilyn Monroe, the woman the world has objectified and commodified and reduced to measurements and blonde hair and breathy sighs, is redefining beauty. She's taking the word back from the industry that's weaponized it against her for a decade. Beauty, not as aesthetic, but as moral category, as survival, as endurance, as proof that you can be broken and still exist, still matter, still deserve to be seen. She turns back to Olivier, her arm still linked with James's, and she delivers her final statement. "He stands next to me, in the shot, or you can shoot the scene without me." The choice is clear, brutal, unambiguous. Olivier looks at her, and for the first time in 6 weeks, he sees past the blonde hair and the tight dress. He sees the will underneath, the steel, the thing that's allowed Norma Jean Mortensen, orphan, foster child, nobody, to become Marilyn Monroe. And he knows he's beaten. His mouth opens, closes, opens again, and finally, hollow and defeated. "Fine, reset." James stays. The words cost him something. You can hear it in his voice. The crew exhales collectively. Movement resumes. The spell breaks. The assistant director calls out positions. The cinematographer adjusts his frame. The script supervisor makes a note. Background extra added per request. But it's so much more than that. And everyone knows it. They shot the scene 4 more times. 4 takes with James Harding standing 3 feet from Marilyn Monroe. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stands there in his too tight tuxedo with his scar catching the light, and tries not to shake. And in every take, Marilyn positions herself so that if the camera catches James, it catches him from his good side. Not that she calls it that. Not that she acts like there's a bad side. But she's tactical, thoughtful, making sure that if this man is going to be on film, he's going to look dignified. In the final cut of The Prince and the Showgirl, you can see James for exactly 7 seconds. Blink and you'll miss him. A tall man in a tuxedo, a scar catching the light, standing perfectly still behind Marilyn Monroe's left shoulder while she dances with Laurence Olivier. 7 seconds. But those 7 seconds cost Marilyn her relationship with Olivier, cost her any chance of working with him again, cost her reputation as someone who played well with others, because Olivier made sure everyone in London knew, told the story at dinner parties, at the Garrick Club, in interviews years later, always framing it as proof of Marilyn's unprofessionalism, her difficulty, her inability to understand how film production works. He never mentioned James's name, never explained why she did it, just reduced it to another anecdote about Marilyn Monroe, the diva, the difficult woman, the blonde who thought she was smart. But that's not the story. The story is what happened after Olivier called cut for the last time. Marilyn walked James off the set, her arm still linked with his, like they were genuinely attending a ball, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Paula Strasberg watched them go and whispered to Eileen, "She just burned a bridge, a very expensive bridge." Eileen nodded. "I know, but God, wasn't it beautiful?" Marilyn walked James to the craft services table, a folding table covered in a white cloth, holding urns of tea and coffee, plates of biscuits, bowls of fruit. She made him a cup of tea herself, added milk and sugar without asking how he took it, handed it to him. His hands were shaking so badly the cup rattled against the saucer. She steadied his hands with her own, held them until they stilled, and then she told him something that would change the trajectory of his life. "You have a good face, James," she said quietly. "An honest face. Don't let anyone tell you different." James shook his head, couldn't accept it. "Miss Monroe, Marilyn," she interrupted. "Just Marilyn." He stared at her. "Marilyn," he repeated, testing the intimacy of her first name. It felt dangerous, too familiar, but she smiled, nodded, encouraged it. "You know what this industry needs, James," she continued. "It needs people who've seen real things, felt real things, not actors pretending to suffer, not directors playing at pain, but people who've survived, people who know what it costs to be alive." She reached into her purse, a small gold clutch. She pulled out a business card, cream-colored, expensive stock, simple black lettering. "This is my photographer, Milton Green, one of the best in America. I'm going to call him tonight. I'm going to tell him to hire you as his assistant." James couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. "Miss Marilyn, I don't know anything about photography. I'm a grip. I move sandbags and tie cables. I don't." She held up a hand, stopped him. "You know what it looks like when someone's barely holding on." She paused, looked at him with those eyes that had sold 1,000,000 magazines. "That's all you need to take a good picture. Technical stuff, that's easy. Anyone can learn f-stops and shutter speed. But seeing people, really seeing them, that's rare. That's what matters." She pressed the card into his hand, closed his fingers around it. "He'll call you tomorrow. Say yes. Promise me you'll say yes." James nodded, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "Promise me," she insisted. "I promise," he whispered. She smiled. A real smile, not the Marilyn Monroe smile from the posters. Something smaller, more private, more real. Then she touched his arm one last time and walked away. The next morning, at 9:47 a.m., James Harding's phone rang. He'd been awake all night, staring at the business card, convincing himself it was a dream, that none of it had happened. But the phone rang, and a man's voice, American accent, professional but warm. "Is this James Harding?" "Yes," James said. "This is Milton Green. Marilyn Monroe called me last night, told me I'd be an idiot not to hire you. So, when can you start? No interview, no portfolio, no questions about experience or training, just Marilyn Monroe's word." And apparently, that was enough. "Tomorrow?" he managed. "Tomorrow's perfect," Milton said. But here's what Marilyn never told him, what he wouldn't learn until decades later. Marilyn didn't just call Milton Green. She called 5 photographers. She told each of them the same thing. "I know a man who understands suffering. If you need someone who can see pain, hire him." She was building him a life, brick by brick, phone call by phone call. 2 years later, London, 1959, James Harding is a set photographer working under Milton Green. It's his 3rd day on Some Like It Hot, and Marilyn Monroe walks into the studio. Their eyes meet across the soundstage. She doesn't say hello, doesn't wave, but as she passes, she touches her own temple, the exact spot where his scar runs. A silent code. "I see you. I remember." That day, James takes what becomes one of the most famous photographs of Marilyn Monroe. It's not a glamour shot. It's Marilyn between takes, exhausted, sitting on a folding chair staring at nothing. The photo will be titled, "Marilyn, Unmasked." It will sell at auction in 2003 for $150,000. But James never sold the original. He kept it in his studio until his death in 2019. His granddaughter said, "He used to say, 'She saw me when I was invisible, so I made sure the world saw her when she wanted to be invisible.' But here's the part that breaks me. 3 days before Marilyn intervened, James had written a suicide note. It's preserved in his estate. 13 words. A man without a face is a ghost, and ghosts don't deserve to live. He'd planned to do it on June 15th, the day after the ballroom shoot. He'd already bought the pills, but on June 14th, Marilyn Monroe linked arms with him, and she gave him a reason to survive. James Harding photographed over 40 films. He worked with Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, Sidney Poitier. He mentored 17 young photographers. He married, had 3 children, lived to 91, and every single day of those 62 extra years, he carried that Polaroid. She saw me as human. Why did Marilyn do it? Why risk a $3 million production for a stranger? Dr. Helen Morrison, a trauma specialist, explains, survivors of childhood abandonment develop hypervigilance towards social exclusion. They can't not see it, and when they witness someone being ostracized, it triggers their own trauma. But instead of freezing, some people intervene. It's called reparative altruism. They save others to save their younger selves. Marilyn saved James, but maybe she was also saving 9-year-old Norma Jean, the girl who sat with the marked boy, the girl who learned that loneliness is worse than hunger. Marilyn died 5 years later, alone, in a locked room, with a phone in her hand. The woman who saw everyone died invisible. In a 2018 interview, James said, "People ask what Marilyn Monroe was really like, and I tell them she was the only person who looked at me and saw a human being. Not a scar, not a mistake, a human being. She saved my life. I spent 60 years trying to repay that, but you can't repay a gift like that. You can only pass it on." James died in 2019. At his funeral, 17 photographers spoke. Everyone told the same story. James saw me when I was invisible. He'd spent 60 years becoming her, embodying her gift, multiplying her intervention. His granddaughter Emma held up the Polaroid. This is what love looks like. Not romance, but the kind that says, "I see you. You're not alone. You deserve to exist." That's what Marilyn gave my grandfather, and that's what he gave back to the world. After James died, Emma found a letter in his desk, dated June 15, 1957, the day he was supposed to die, addressed to Marilyn. He never sent it, but he kept it for 62 years. "Dear Marilyn, you saved my life yesterday. I don't mean that metaphorically. 3 days ago, I bought 60 sleeping pills. I was going to take them today. I was tired of being the thing people looked away from. But then you linked your arm through mine. You looked at my face and called it beautiful. You told me I was stronger than whatever tried to kill me. And something in me broke, or maybe healed. I went home and poured those pills down the toilet. I decided to survive. Because if Marilyn Monroe thinks I'm worth saving, then maybe I am. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying. I will carry it every day for the rest of my life. I promise I won't waste it. I promise I'll pass it on. With all my gratitude, James Harding." 62 years. That's how long James kept his promise. All because Marilyn decided a man's scar was more important than a shot. Proximity is rebellion. Kindness is resistance. And sometimes, linking arms with a stranger is the most revolutionary thing you can do. This is the story Hollywood tried to hide, because it doesn't fit the narrative, can't be sold, can't be spun. It's just human, and humanity has never been good business. But it's the only business that matters. Marilyn died at 36. James lived to 91. 62 years. All of it a gift, all borrowed time, all possible because someone saw him and refused to look away. That's what happened on stage 4, on June 14, 1957, when Marilyn proved that the most important moments don't make the final cut, that survival is beautiful, that scars are proof of strength, that being seen is a human right, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to let someone disappear. For Norma Jean, for Thomas, for James, for everyone who survived. This is the story of what it means to see and to be seen, to save and to be saved, and maybe, if we're very lucky, to pass it on.